A fortnight ago, I shared with you how Genesis 32 is my favorite biblical story. It is my favorite because it speaks of deep intimacy with God, something I at times struggle with, and something I see lacking in many communities inside the church. And I think it is lacking because we don't do what Jacob does. We don't throw ourselves with all that we have and all that we are into the arms of the living God. Many Christians hold back, compartmentalizing faith to a Sunday morning encounter or to a rather formal, distant, private, and/or cerebral experience. Jacob, on the other hand, breaks through the limits and boundaries many of us try to set. Well, actually, that's not quite right. God breaks through these walls that even Jacob erected, and Jacob lets him. Jacob does not run away, risking instead to walk away limping. But also he opens himself up to receiving in this way God's blessing, which is beyond human understanding and beyond any human idea of success. And I believe that this is a challenge for many Christians in general and for many Episcopalians in particular. We are conservative, small c. We like to keep things as they were and have been. And we don't want boats to be rocked, not by outsiders, not by our clergy, not by the Bible, and most definitely not by God. So we wrap God into a blanket, set him into a comfy chair, make him a cup of tea, and go there. All the while, we come up with all kinds of clever and intelligent ways to distance ourselves from God's radical self-revelation. And I don't care if it is John Dominic Crossan, N.T. Wright, Shane Claiborne, or Markus Borg that you are reading, but if they only serve to affirm what you believe or what you want to believe, if they only serve to make you join God on that comfy chair with a cuppa, and if they don't break down the walls and make you and I wrestle with God, make us get intimate with God, then we really are far from the truth of God's self-revelation and should move beyond these authors. Of course, I am saying these things partially to irk you a bit, to get you a bit riled up, which is my job. As rector of St. John's, I am in the unique position to comfort any afflicted person walking through our doors and to equally afflict the comfortable who have been part of our community for a while. This is not meant as a sign of disrespect. I continue to be blown away by the beauty of the people of St. John's. But I also must be a thorn in your side more often than you would like me to be. So I'm sharing all this with you today, mostly because I believe the coronavirus pandemic has revealed that maintaining the vibrancy of our community in our days is a huge challenge. There's H for one. We're not as diverse as we could be and really do not reflect the demographics of the city around us. But there's something else. Too often, I believe, we are driven by a personal need for spiritual self-gratification. I know this sounds harsh, but why is it that we keep doing what we have been doing all the time, and that we get flustered when we see and hear God dragging us beyond ourselves, out of our carefully knitted safety nets. But God did not reveal himself to be safe. And God did not reveal himself for us to be safe either. There is a deep truth revealed in Genesis 32. Without limping, there is no blessing. Without intimacy and passion, there is no growth and life. I know, I am overly dramatic again, right? And what alternatives do I actually have to offer? I keep on droning on and on about this, but do I have a plan how to change things? And most importantly, is right now really the time to dismantle our small c conservatism? Because the summary of our tradition is what keeps us sane and focused, isn't it? Well, yes and no. There are many things at St. John's that indeed provide an amazing entryway into the mystery of our triune God. Our musical tradition, for example, or the reality of prayers lifted up by many outside even of the Sunday services, or the pastoral work done away from the limelight. But as a community, we also at times get stuck. And I believe we do so because we might have embraced a sense of entitlement and claim certain privileges within our community of faith. These are privileges that have come with our experience and our skills. These are privileges that accompany our comfort and our complacency. These are privileges that have grown out of time here and of our positions. These privileges are the product of our needs and desires. And yes, this goes for the rector as well. God knows, and I suspect not just God, how stuck I can be in my own privileges. But privileges don't get us anywhere. Privileges do provide relief and meaning, maybe on the surface, but in reality, they don't. Privileges do not bring about life. Quite the contrary. And if you think that I'm once again being too much of a drama queen and way too radical, then I want you to consider today's reading from Genesis. One thing to remember in the story is the cultural context. The story is set within a patriarchal system that favored elder sons. If you were male and born early, you were entitled to all kinds of privileges. Forget about being a younger sibling, and most definitely forget about being a daughter. Ouch. Thank God that is not quite our reality anymore, even though daughters still too often are discouraged from living into the fullness of their capabilities, even in our day and age. But then take Joseph. Joseph stands contrary to the privileges of his brothers. His rainbow-colored coat is a loud signal that his father favors him, the 11th born. And he does so even though, or maybe because, Joseph is a snitch. Yes, this is a rather dysfunctional family, unlike any of our own families, of course. I have told you many times how perfect my family is. I'm the eldest son, after all. But joking aside, Joseph's brothers cannot deal with how Joseph challenges their privileges and entitlement. So they decide that he has to go. And so he ends up on the bottom of the well with the prospect of being killed right away or of being killed 1,000,000 times over by serving as a slave. And the challenge for us today is to not just turn the brothers into evil villains, but to identify with them. Because this is a story that stands as an allegory for the realities of our times as well. When the descendants of the Hiroshima bombing challenged the use of the atomic bomb, how often are they met with the argument that little boy sped up the war and saved Allied lives? When young demonstrators in Lebanon challenged the elites to stop the corruption and political entitlement, how often were they told that everything is fully under control, including the harbor of Beirut? When BAME citizens of our country challenge the public presence of certain statues, how often is their view of these images of oppressors deemed invalid? And what about our own privileges? And what about our privileges and entitlements when it comes to the church? Are we willing to listen to those in rainbow-colored coats who aren't part of the cabal of shepherds? Or do we feel threatened by them in our privileges so that we throw these messengers of change into a well? Sermons on today's text often try to make it about God's absolute sovereignty and God's eternal providence. After all, in the end, Joseph is elevated beyond imagination in Egypt. God obviously had a plan. But despite the fact that I do hold onto the hope that God is good all the time, we need to look honestly at the brothers today, and we need to be willing to see how they hold up a mirror to the way we run the show in our own lives and in the life of the church. And when we understand that we, each and every one of us, indeed has a Reuben, a Simeon, a Levi, a Judah, an Issachar, a Zebulun, a Gad, an Asher, a Dan, or a Naphtali in him or herself, then the text can reveal that unlike American Express credit cards, membership in Ha'am Elohim, within the people of God, does not come with privileges. Instead, it comes with a rainbow-colored coat that speaks loudly and colorfully to the world and that pushes us into unsafe spaces, but only to find a blessing there and to find it maybe only there.